Hi, guys. Welcome back to It's All Light. I'm your host, Natalie Baugh, and today's guest is CJ, and I don't even know how to say your last name now that I'm here.
Badsguard. You're good.
Bagsgard.
Perfect.
It's
Nailed it.
spelled really tricky, and just don't even try.
That's all good.
So I work with CJ's brother Luke, and I've been trying to get Luke on here. We have many carpool chats up to the office, and Luke just hasn't said yes to be on the podcast, but his brother willingly said, "I'll do it." So here's CJ. I met him last week. He ran with Luke and me the last quarter of my 50-mile ultra race, and yeah, it was great. We had a great time. He saw me probably at my worst. Yeah, that was fun. Fun and the hardest thing, but we did it. And now he's going to probably want to do all 50 by himself one day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Motivated.
Yeah. No, Luke brought him along cuz he enjoys trail running whereas Luke doesn't really love hiking as much, but grateful for their support and happy to have a new acquaintance and excited to hear what you have to say and hear what you're passionate about and what energy you've put into different areas in your life. So, a little bit about CJ. He's from Spanish Fork. Fun fact is, he killed a skunk with a golf club. How old were you? Was that recent?
No, that was when I was a little kid. That's kind of my attention grabber. Me and my brother and a couple buddies uh, went skunk hunting one night, and we weren't allowed to take the shotgun, so we took golf clubs and baseball bats, and
Oh,
lo and
man.
behold, we found one, and
Oh, it didn't spray you guys then?
oh yeah, all over. Yeah,
Oh,
we were covered
gosh.
head to toe. We weren't allowed to come inside. We had to get hosed down outside at midnight. It was
Man.
it was great.
So,
Totally worth it.
so Luke has told me you grew up on a farm, kind of, yeah?
Yeah, I mean we live out west of Spanish Fork. It's called Lake Shore.
Mm.
It's kind of a little I don't know, country vibe place, and yeah, we've got fields around, and we grew up on a farm and grew up picking produce for the neighbors and irrigating the fields for our uncles and doing all that fun stuff.
Nice. Yeah, good skills to learn for sure.
Yeah.
I think hopefully one day I'll have like a homestead ranch. That's just the dream. It'd be so fun just to have property and animals, but it's a ton of work and it, yeah, it definitely pushes you. You said produce. You said you love all food except peas. What's your favorite food then?
Oh man, one food. I just talked with somebody about this earlier this week. I actually love grocery store sushi for whatever reason. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's my absolute favorite, but it's a good cheap one that's up there.
I feel like if you do it when it's freshly made, like if you know when they're making it and you buy it pretty soon after, it's pretty good. But sometimes it really just hit the spot. Smith's and Harmon's are my go-to for that sushi.
Okay, yeah, those are good ones.
It's yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes it's just so good. Oh, I haven't had sushi in a long time. That's okay. Back on track. What what do you light up about? Let's get to know you a little bit better and what we're gonna chat about today.
Man, I don't have the list in front of me, but I mean, mainly progress, moving forward, becoming a better person, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
is probably one of the bigger ones.
And
Um,
why? Can I ask why? Like, how do you come to that, and what propels you to want to be better?
um, honestly, it probably really started in part of my form on there. I've had issues and struggled with pornography for a lot of years,
Mm,
and once I finally started putting in some real effort for that, I realized that I could actually work on that and make some serious progress. And
yeah.
so after that, it was like, well, if I can, make progress in that aspect of my life, why can't I do it in any other aspect of my life? And so that kind of trickled over, and since then I've been able to, being a pacer for you was something that was really fun to do that I would never think to have done. And so just anything that I can do to become a better person, more Christ-like, repent daily, and if I can do that and help anyone else along their way as well,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm all for it. And if we really want to dig into it a little more about kind of some some LDS church cliches, I'd love to dig into that. But I think there's definitely a facade that many of us, and I do it all the time to a facade of perfection that we want to put on when we go to church or when we meet with certain
Mhm.
people,
Right.
that I don't necessarily think is what we should do, and it's something I try to not do as much anymore,
Yeah.
because I've definitely done it for sure.
No, yeah, I think there's so much to the religious culture side of things, but also just the process of bettering yourself usually is paired with something you recognize you're not good at, right? Or
Right.
something you struggle with. And for some, like for me, I feel like there's some things that will take me my whole life to learn and figure out. So it's cool to hear others' experiences because I feel like it then gives us some new ideas on what we could then apply to our own lives. So I'm excited to hear more on your thoughts on this. A few other things you mentioned before we dive deeper is you love pickleball. I think you and your brother have won like numerous competitions, which is impressive.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
for every one we win, there's about 10 that we lose, but when we win, it's a big deal.
that's awesome. Pickleball is so much fun. I do love it. You also mentioned, yeah, porn recovery, relationships, mental, physical, and spiritual growth, like you said before, progression. So yeah, let's kind of jump into that. You mentioned you wanted to share some things with putting up a facade. Do you want to start there?
Sure. Yeah. That's well, yeah. We can start there, and that directly relates with my story and history with
Yeah.
pornography recovery. To be honest,
Mm.
because I think there's a huge facade that a lot of people try to put on, and there's a lot of shame associated with pornography and using pornography and the things that come from that and lead to other things that aren't necessarily good. And that's one of the biggest things is just shame, and you try to hide it. You try to not tell anybody. You think you're alone. You think you can't do it, and so you put on this facade that everything's okay, that nothing's wrong, that
Yeah.
I have no issues with it, and that I'll just bury it. And I'll just do it by myself. I'll use pure willpower to do it. And to be quite honest, it's the exact opposite. If you want to make any serious recovery, it's you need to bring it forward in the proper light, right? We don't need to be grotesque or other things like that about it. But it's like, hey, like
Mhm.
I have issues with this. I need someone to talk to, whether it's your parents, friends, brother, sister, family members. They have people in recovery groups, whatever it may be. The best way to put off the facade, number one, is to just tear it down and let people know that you're human.
Mm.
And that's how you can actually move forward and make progress in many aspects of life. And there's the saying that Christ is it's through him and through the atonement that we can repent and become better. And more often than not, it's through somebody else that Christ is doing that. And with pornography recovery, it's exactly that.
Mm. Like it's you can't do it on your own. You need
Yeah,
Christ as well as support from
right. You
people.
need Christ, and you need
Mm.
people who can support you in that decision and help you along the way. And there's many people that have gone through very similar things that you're going through, and you're not alone. That's the biggest thing is there's other people that are
Mhm.
out there that you can you know work on it together with, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, I mean, I can in the sense of like, yeah, we all have sins and mistakes, and like sometimes sharing those can be so scary, because we
Exactly.
don't like anybody to know that we're imperfect, which is so funny because we all know we're so imperfect, but yet we still want to just appear like we're doing okay. Why do you think that? Like, what? Like, is it just we're afraid of the shame?
I think a big part of it's the shame. I think to some degree all of us have a little bit of personal pride,
Mm hmm.
and I think some of it is subconscious. Like I think we do it daily. Like, when we're like someone comes up and says, "Oh, hey, let me come help you." And you're like, "Oh, no, no, I got it. It's okay. I can do it." It's like, you're right, you can do it, but what's wrong with letting someone else help you?
Mm,
Whether
yeah.
it's putting groceries in your car or getting a flat tire, or we always want to say, "Oh, no, no, I got this. I can do it." Like, "Oh, no, I don't need your help." And you're probably right. You can do it and you don't need help, but it's okay to let somebody else help you.
Yeah.
And that's something I've tried to work on too. It's like, hey, it's okay to let somebody help you when you don't want it or you don't want to let them.
Mm. For me, I just naturally don't have that. I
Oh,
usually
that's great.
ask for help, probably too much, or I overshare. So sometimes, but there are definitely those things in my life that I can relate to where it's like, oh yeah, like definitely there's pride, and sometimes I think about trying to better myself, and one of those things I'm trying to work on is just being more service oriented and selfless and looking outward to help others. And yet
Right.
I feel like I keep just coming back to like something still attached to my ego. So I'm working on detaching that just so I can just
Yeah.
go serve to serve. Because sometimes I serve because I know it'll make me feel better and it'll help me forget all my problems. But I'm like, okay, that's still about me. So I need to just go serve freely and willingly. But yeah, it's detaching that ego and pride and getting over that. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's a big part of it. And at least for me, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to actually learn to actually shed the shame,
Hmm.
you know?
So opening up about it and getting help. So before now, like, do you mind me asking, like, was it majority of your
No.
life,
Yeah.
and then how, like, in what ways, like you said, did it transfer into bettering yourself in other ways? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So kind of a rough, I guess I'll try and shorten the timeline, but I kind of ran into pornography when I was a young teen, which
Common, yeah.
statistically they're getting younger and younger that they're being exposed to pornography. So I would say I was a late teen, 12 or 13, 14, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually I didn't know what I was seeing, what was going on, and then I actually did talk to my dad about it, and he pointed me in the right direction to my bishop, and talked to my bishop, and you know, got things figured out, and thought I was good, and was using willpower, and wasn't using all the proper resources, and wasn't
Mm.
truly understanding what my brain was doing, to be honest. And I was okay, kind of in and out for a while, and then just before my mission, kind of cleaned things under the rug, and then went on my mission. I was fine. I come home, and for probably the first year, I was okay, and then it just kind of slowly but surely crept back in. I'm going to college. I get a phone. I have a computer, and then it's just a big thing that they talk about is Pavlov's dog. If you've ever heard of that,
Mm-mm.
I guess it was a so there was a what was it? A study they did with dogs where they would ring a bell and the dogs would salivate because they would bring them food.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
over time, when the dogs um, kept ringing the bell, they kept bringing them food. And then it got to the point to where, well, they weren't feeding them the food, but they would ring the bell and the dogs would still salivate. And I'd say in many aspects, it's very similar to a pornography addiction or bad habit, whatever you want to
Mm.
call it. And so it was like, I was on my mission. I was fine. The bell didn't ring very often, and I had no access to it, so I couldn't. And
Mm-hmm.
then I came home, and the bell rang, and I had access to it, and didn't know what to do, didn't know what my brain was doing, and just kind of fell back into the bad habits. And I probably was in and out with meeting with three or four other different bishops. I kind of started ish going to the recovery classes, but not wholeheartedly. And then it just led down a deep and dark track that leads to self abuse and other things.
Mm.
Other
Sad.
people got involved, which isn't good,
Mm.
and I just hit rock bottom at that point. And honestly, I was just in kind of a self loathing point in my life, and up to this point, not many people or anybody really knew, and I was putting on the happy face, and I was happy in many other aspects of my life, right? But
Yeah.
just this one was a rotten one that was dragging me down, and I just kind of was in a self hatred point for 3 or 4 months, and then
Hmm.
I just had enough. It was just eating me up, and finally decided I needed to meet with my bishop. And I like not just meet with my bishop like before. I was like meeting with my bishop this time was I don't care what I have to do. I don't care who know. At that point, I was ready to shed the shame and let everybody know what was going on, and I was done. I was sick of it,
Mm.
and that's exactly what I said to my bishop. And I ended up going to disciplinary council with the stake, met with them, and I was going into that meeting with the stake. I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, didn't know what was going to go on, and I absolutely believe that was the devil just doing everything he could to try and not,
Get
you
you
know,
where you wanted to be.
tell me where I needed to go. And I went
Yeah,
into that
wow.
meeting with my stake president, and it was the most uplifting, positive experience I ever had. I've never felt more love in my life. And that from that point on, it wasn't easy, but it was so much easier that I had finally decided to shed the shame. And it was like I didn't
Yeah.
care who knew, I didn't care how long it took. I was gonna, do whatever they told me to. And so over, it was probably a little over a year or just under a year. I read some books. I started going to classes regularly. I'm on a group me with the addiction recovery people, and
Mm,
you know, I actually don't participate much in the chat, but I read them all the time and love it, and
just
go to
that
the class as
just that
often as I
support.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like an AA group, but for
Mhm. Yeah.
addiction recovery in general, and it's a
Yeah.
pornography specific one. And
Yeah.
there's awesome people there from all walks of life, married, not married, older, younger,
Mhm.
and they all just have wonderful insight and just amazing nuggets of truth and love, and
Yeah, just to
preach about
keep moving forward. Sorry, preach about what?
just about the atonement, and it's all Christ centered for sure.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing. And then just not that alone, but I got to a point where I was just hungry to learn more, and reading books and listening to podcasts about how the brain works and
Mhm.
habits to change. And honestly, I've if therapy is needed, I think that's a great avenue. And I've never personally gone to my own one-on-one therapy, but I have
Mhm.
people in my life who are therapists that I've chatted with about it.
Yeah. Good.
There's several really good podcasts. Sarah Brewer's Overcoming Pornography. If you want to drop name one, that's a great
Hmm.
one.
I haven't heard of that.
Um, yeah, but anyway, there's all kinds of recovery podcasts you can look up and
Mhm.
study and read, and it's just
Yeah,
amazing.
it is amazing that there is so much love and help. When you were talking about just being at rock bottom, just that self-hate is so hard cuz I think to some degree any mistake we're just like, "Ah, I can't believe I made that mistake again." Like, dang
Right.
it, and the more it happens, the more you're like, again, like for the thousandth time I've made the same mistake, and it's
Yeah.
hard to love yourself. In last week's episode we talked about just meeting your mistakes with love, and as yourself, it's so hard to do that, but if you learn how to do that for yourself, you can do that so much better for other people, which is cool. I think in this addiction recovery setting, other people have gone through learning to love themselves, and then they can help other people do the same. Have you felt that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not an easy thing, but it's definitely um there's a thing called progressive failure.
Mm.
And it's like just because you've fallen doesn't mean for the thousandth time that you can't get back up, learn from it, and move on.
Mm.
And like you
Yeah.
said, learning to love yourself is a huge one, because the
Yeah.
Lord loves you regardless.
Mm.
And self-loathing and self-shame is one of the hardest things to overcome, especially with um, this type of bad habit. And
Yeah.
it takes time to truly realize that, hey, like, you don't start back over from square one. You start back up right here, right now,
Mm-hmm.
and like, make a game plan, work on it, get people involved if you need to, and you move on. And it takes, it probably took me months of doing that repeatedly in my head over and over before I actually truly believed it, before it actually finally worked
Mm.
and started, really making some progress in my life in that aspect.
Mm.
And I don't
Yes.
know, some of the things that
Yeah.
you have to do or need to do are scary, and you just gotta you know go forward with faith in that aspect to do it.
In that process that took months and times, what were a few that like super impacted you,
Um, there was a
if you
lot,
don't
but
mind me asking?
one that really came to my mind was I was kind of in the middle of the process. Had it been probably 5 or 6 months since I had my interview with my state presidency, and I was doing really well at that point. and still wasn't perfect, but was definitely making good progress. And I ended up going on a cruise with a bunch of friends, just a bunch of single guys and girls, and super awesome people. And I brought one of the books with me. It's called "He Restoreth My Soul," and it's specifically about pornography and recovery and what it does to the brain and all that stuff.
Mm.
And I brought the book with me, and we were just sitting out one day, and one of the girls asked me about the book I was reading, and my stomach kind of knotted up. And at that point, I was willing to talk to people, and they were all men, all brethren. I'd never really talked to a female about any of this or mentioned it at all, and it still scared the living shit out of me to do it. And just because I was like, oh man, here, this is my weakness.
Mhm.
This is such a horrible. It's a taboo thing that you don't talk about
Right.
with people of the opposite gender or even in the church. And
Mhm.
I just straight up, I just went into it and told her, yeah, this is what it is, and this is what I'm working on. And she was absolutely awesome and nothing but supportive, and had her own stories to share of connections that she had through. Not that she was going through it, but that she had
Mhm.
connections, to it. And that led into actually chatting with several of the other young ladies that went on the cruise, and they all had some sort of connection with it. Not that they all had issues with it, but they're like, oh, like I have a brother or
Mhm.
someone like that, or I think that there were issues like this in a previous relationship or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievably eye-opening and amazing to hear, a different point of view from, young women about it. And it
Yeah.
was nothing but um, something that helped me, um, become better and learn and grow. And I was like, wow, like I truly can like open up about things like this, and it can be a positive thing in the right setting.
Yeah.
And since then, like, not that I'm perfect now, even like I talk to people about this today, and they're like, oh, you're like super open about it and talk about it. You must just like be perfect at it and not have any issues with it. It's
Mm.
like if you understand, like even AA recovery, it's like it's a lifelong thing that you constantly work on every single day.
Well, any of
There's,
our
there's,
mistakes, right?
yeah,
We're
there's no
always,
break, you know?
yeah. What helps you with that no break? Like, it's sometimes hard for me to realize, like, that our imperfections are always going to be there. It's like I'm always going to be imperfect. Like, what helps you not feel like you're falling short?
Well, there's a phrase that I don't even know if it's from somebody else, but learning to be content but never satisfied.
Mm.
So it's like learning to be content with, hey, you know what? I'm in a good place right now, and I might not be perfect. And I think perspective is a huge part of it.
Mm.
And, just, being like, hey, you know what? Like, I have a functioning, healthy body and I'm in good shape, or, I have two eyes that work and I can read it. Like, even just reading and writing is so huge. And I think we take it for granted every single day. We have so much technology, like perspective for sure is a big part of it. But yeah, just learning to be content but never satisfied, I guess, would be a phrase that I just try to live by or try to implement as much as I can.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do, and a big part of it, like you said, is self-love. You got to learn to love yourself and be like, okay, it's okay to you know be where you're at, and so long as you're moving forward and progressing, that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. So I guess this is something I've tried to study a ton, and I feel like I still haven't gotten a grasp on progression. In some ways, I have, but some days I feel like I look at the last 5 years of my life and it's like, what have I done? But what helps you recognize that you are progressing?
Oh man, what helps me recognize that I am progressing?
Yeah, and this could be
Well,
in any area of
right,
your life. I mean,
right. Well,
yeah, you could measure your muscles getting bigger, but other
right.
than that,
Well, so like in the form I filled out, I've tried to really break down kind of my life into three sections, and it's my physical, my spiritual, and my mental,
hmm
and that's it. There's three. And it's simple, it's easy. I'm a guy, I can do that. It's like, okay, I just pick one thing in each of those things that I can work on and
Mm-hmm.
try and get better at.
Yeah.
And, the physical one, that one's pretty easy to measure. Am I going to the gym daily? Am I pushing myself? Like, let's say, 3 to 4 days a week really isn't that much of working out. So, like, okay, if I can try to do 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week, I feel like that's actually making progress in that area.
Okay.
And, there's one physical, one mental. For me, that was a huge one that I'd never really thought about for the longest time. It's like, okay, am I listening to these podcasts and trying to change my habits and the forms that I've created in my brain and trying to understand what my brain's doing? A big one for me mentally is trying to not get angry when I play pickleball. Honestly, that's a mental game that I try to play and win every time. And honestly, like whether I win or lose every single game at pickleball, I know that I can win that mental game of not getting angry. And you know what? Sometimes I lose it. Sometimes I don't win that. But I know that I can win that one every single time.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's up to me whether I'm going to win that one or not. It's not up to anyone else. It's not up to my partner. It's not up to how I play that day. That one's literally just up to me.
Just how you react and
Right.
take situations. Okay.
Exactly. And then spiritually, reading and praying. And I know that's, the children's answers, but they really are so important. And
Classics, yeah.
if you make them something that you thoroughly enjoy, whether it's, deep doctrine or listening to general conference talks or like actually opening and reading the scriptures or just listening to them, something that you get excited about engages you in the gospel in whatever aspect it is, or going to the temple,
Yeah.
serving people. Like there's a whole list of ways that you can do that one spiritually. And for me, like, little small things that I can do in each of those aspects are simple and easy ways to find out if I'm progressing or not in those three areas of my life.
Yeah.
And obviously, they can lead up to bigger and better goals if you want to put those or whatever. Like running a freaking ultra marathon would probably be a big one in the physical department, which, you know,
It feels good to be done with that.
right. And I'm sure that one was a big mental,
Yeah.
race too, right? Like I'm literally
Mm-hmm.
actually gonna run 50 miles.
Hike slash
And
walk 50
right,
miles.
well,
I feel like
yeah.
I can't say I ran 50 miles because I didn't. I can say I walked 50 miles,
Uh,
but
y-
now I'm ready to do it again and run it.
Holy cow. Yeah, there you go.
But no, yeah, I love those areas. I think it's similar to like the former duty to God or personal progress. They encourage the four areas: mental, physical, spiritual, and then they add social, which I
Oh,
think
sure.
is
That's a great
a big
one.
one as well. So I try to fit my goals around them and around those four and then do check-ins. And my friend Aubrey taught me the 8 dimensions of wellness, and that adds in a few more, like financial, economically,
Right.
career wise, because those are all things that are
Yeah.
important to figure out in your life because they all contribute to who
Oh,
you're
for sure.
becoming. Which, yeah, becoming and progressing are maybe a word that's synonymous.
I think that the three, base ones need to be physical, spiritual, and mental,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to be yourself. And then I think over time, once you're like, okay, I'm in a good place with these three, now I can start to, add social, and I can start to add financial, and I can start to add all the other dimensions. At least
Right.
that's what I think. I don't know what you think, but I'm like, I think you need to start with those three, and once those three are in a good place, then you can start to add other ones.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of at least for me, sometimes just jumping into it can help you learn it. Like,
Okay. Okay, yeah.
like for me,
Like if you just finally do it, then it'll work.
yeah, and I think for me, that's just like the kickstart I need for accomplishing things. Like I sign up for a race and then I'm like, okay, I signed up. I have to train for it and I'm going to run it. And then you cross that finish line and you're like, wow, I did it. Then it's like, okay, what else am I capable of doing? And then like for me running is just an outlet, so it's like even if I'm not doing good mentally, physically or spiritually and I go run and like and working on that, then it kind of, I guess that's the physical, right? Then it kind of encourages me to improve my mental and spiritual. And I think you had mentioned something like that previously, like different areas can propel you to be better in the other aspect.
Right. Well, and they can all leak into each other, right? Like you're
Yeah.
saying, like, you know,
Yeah. Um, so you were talking about like how and what people do to progress. Let's talk about the how and the what. Let's give people some things that they can try differently, maybe if they're stuck in wanting to progress but aren't getting there. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm like, how to progress? Like
Yeah.
list items,
So we kind of talked about the what, mental, physical, spiritual, whatever you feel like you want
right?
to, but the how. The how is where I think I get caught up in is how am I, and we kind of mentioned this previously, but what are some other ways that you either help people or help yourself progress?
Um, the Nike phrase, I guess, just do it. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever listened to. I mean, we talked about David Goggins a little bit, and he can absolutely be a little rough with the language, but man, he is just so much of the you need to just freaking man up and just finally do it
Mhm.
and self motivating. And the how, I mean, and the easy one for me physically is like, okay, like just one step at a time. And there's
Mhm.
people that talk about this all the time. It's like, you know what? Maybe you want to go to the gym and you want to start working out, but maybe for the first week or 2 weeks, you don't even go to the gym. You just drive into the parking lot and you park there for 20 minutes. That's it. That's all you do for a week. And it's like, okay, like I didn't actually physically do any, do
Yeah.
something. And then like the next week, I'm going to go into the gym and sit down for 20 minutes and watch TV. That's it.
Hmm.
I don't know, like the scripture says small and simple things. And I think that, that potentially for some people could be a big one. And for me, when I was really getting into the physical one, it was like, I really actually want to go to the gym 5 to 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And that was something that I thought I really couldn't do. It's like, you know what? If I actually make it a priority in my life, I have been able to do it.
Isn't
And
that,
then,
yeah, I feel like that's a big key. I'm going to pause you for a second, just talk about what we make time for in our lives. That shows us what we're trying to do and progress and become. It all goes back to where are we spending our time?
yeah, where are that really comes down to where are your priorities
What
at?
are your
Because we
big
only have
rocks?
yeah, we only have a finite amount of time, and it's okay. Well, what are you spending your time actually doing? That's where your priorities are, right?
Okay, so one of my bad habits is turning on a show in the background, either when I'm doing laundry or just in my kitchen, and then that becomes a thing where that's I like go to it. I think it's a distracting mechanism as well as like sometimes I watch shit and I don't even check my screen time, but I'm like, okay, I could be reading. I could because I'm like doing my PT stretches and I just turn on the show and I'm like, I could easily just set up a book or a conference talk. It's like why like this is one thing that it's just like why do I keep going to this and how can I stop it and remember that that's not what I want to be spending my time doing. That's not who I want to become. Like how do you get out of that?
I think it's you got to regulate. Well, if you really want to do it, like okay, like maybe for a week you need to like write down some serious notes of how much time are you actually wasting on your shows. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then like for the next week, okay, I just want to cut out 25% of that. And
Okay.
instead of watching my show, I'm gonna
Grab a book.
grab a book. Or maybe you're like, I don't have time to read a book, but maybe instead of watching my show, I throw on a conference talk to listen to instead, or some positive YouTube video. I don't know. You can throw on a Ronnie Coleman uplifting go do it video or something like
I don't even
something like that.
I don't even know who that is. You'll have to send me a link.
No, he's just
Oh.
lightweight, baby. He's a huge bodybuilder from
Oh,
the early
okay.
2000s. It's pretty famous, but
I'll have to look
it's
that
just
up.
like honestly
Hmm.
taking serious, detailed notes of you're like, okay, like how much time am I actually wasting doing this
Detailed notes.
for a week,
Okay.
for a month, and then it's like, okay, I'm wasting, let's say, I'm averaging 2 hours a day. Like, wow, that's a lot. For the next week or 2 weeks, let's just cut it down to an hour and a half. And instead of watching my show, I'm gonna listen to a conference, two conference talks, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna listen to scriptures, or I'm gonna listen to this podcast about addiction recovery or about, I don't know, something that you're passionate about or interested in learning about.
Or
I don't
want
know,
to
like,
progress in, right?
yeah, like that
What are
doesn't
your
take
goals?
much,
So
you know.
are you a big goal setter? Like does that help you progress?
Yeah, for me, it does, and that's something I still need to get better at. Like I have certain goals. It's like I actually need to like sit down and write some specific steps to
Yeah.
do this. You know?
I learned on my mission and tried to teach my missionaries I taught just a goal without a plan will fail, you know? So I try to think about
Yeah, it's
my
true.
life and I kind of based my goals off of those 8 dimensions of wellness. And honestly, we're in June and I have maybe looked at them twice or three times. But so it's taking that and realizing, okay, maybe I'm not good at following up with those, but what are things I can do right now that I'm good at? Or my friend who's like a mental coach, she's like, if imagine like you already are there, like what does that look like? And then just start putting yourself in that situation. Like, oh, like I guess for my ultra, it's like, oh, I'm already an ultra runner. I can already go and run. You know, like for me, it was running that first over 26 miles. I'm like, okay, I've already done that. Like I can keep going. You know, it's like getting your mind to where you already want to be. Like in my mind, I had to finish running 50 miles before I actually did it. And
Right.
now I'm trying to take that and plug that into other areas of my life. Like, okay, there's a billion things I want to work on. I have 8 dimensions of goals that I'm trying to set, but like one thing right now that I can see evidently is like, okay, I'm spending way too much time on my phone. So now like I love that you said get into the details. I think that is so important. Just tracking your time maybe is the first step, right? Like you said, driving to the gym, but maybe even just tracking my time and not even trying to change anything, but just understanding it better so that then the next week I can be like, okay, now replacing it, right? And creating those better
Right.
habits. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
No, that's dead on. And then I would just add, reading and understanding your physical brain and body and what it takes to form and make a habit.
Mm.
I don't know if it's true, but I think we've all heard that it takes 30 days to create a habit and 3 days to break one.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, cool, like if I can do this for 30 days and only mess up twice, then I've created the habit and I'm good to go.
Mm.
And that can, at least for me, that's a big one. It's like, okay, or if I can do it for a week or 2 weeks, then that's almost a habit and I'm almost there. Then it just gets easier to actually do it
Yeah.
continuously after that.
Yeah, there for sure is a threshold that you have to pass. I think mostly mentally in anything. Like I was trying to go off sugar and I did it once for 2 weeks and I was good and I had like a buddy doing it with me. And then me and my other friend tried to do it. We're like, okay, let's do it for a month. And like the first day I failed and then I just gave up. I was like, great, great. You know, now I'm like having to reevaluate. Okay, yeah, I want to do that because when I eat sugar, my immune system drops and I don't want to be sick. When I eat sugar, my skin is worse. When I eat sugar, I feel crappy. Like it's proven. I know
Right,
that, you know? So it's like not buying it for one or planning meals instead that are healthy and you don't want it, you know, like finding healthy alternatives is helpful. But yeah, I remember anytime we had like a break in school from cross country, they would give us some written workouts and they're like, you've been working so hard for the past whatever weeks. And they're like, if you take days off, you're going to lose like 2 weeks of work, similar to what
right,
you were saying. So that was always motivation too. It's like, I don't want to stop because I don't want to lose what I've already built up. And
right.
it just takes discipline. What are your thoughts on discipline?
Oh, discipline's hard. Well, and just
How do you build that?
uh, over time, turning it into a habit.
Right?
Becoming Christ-like. But I mean, sorry, just what you're talking about right there with that sugar incident that's exactly can be progressive failure.
Oh
Is
yeah?
when you sit down and you're like, okay, what actually happened in this instant? Like, why?
Mm.
What was the story? When did I eat it? Why did I eat it? What time of day? What was going on? Like you analyze the situation of what actually happened and break it down, and then you can make a plan going forward. Okay, well, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to set myself up here, or I'm going to have this in place so that I can do this instead of eating that sugar.
Mm.
That's a big part of the what's considered progressive failure is and truly analyzing your moments when you failed and using that to your advantage moving forward on how you can learn from it and set yourself up for success the next time you're tempted in
Yeah.
that situation.
Which which through different experiences in my life and different bad habits, like I totally have had to think through those things, and it is cool to see progression. Like if I really think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a bad habit, and I learned through these details how to overcome it and how to make it not a problem anymore, which is empowering to then just leave that in the past and move forward, which I'm sure just especially with porn recovery, like I bet that moving forward just feels good when you feel like you've obtained that discipline in that area, right?
Right. Well, and I mean, specifically with that, your brain naturally tells yourself, "Oh, it's over. You're starting from square one." There's, it's not like up to this point you've learned a whole bunch and you know what to do in many other situations and how to
Mhm.
prevent this. You just automatically tell yourself you're a horrible person and you have to start from zero. And that's absolutely not true.
Mm.
And that's just a natural trigger that your brain does, and it takes a lot of time and effort to actually change that and form a different habit and form a different way, connection in your brain for when that happens.
Yeah. It'd be cool. I'll get a list from you and I'll put it in the show notes of just studies about the brain. That to me is so cool. And my dad's read some books about the brain, and just the more you learn about it, the more you can figure out how, in a sense, to control it, right? And at
Right.
least in my personal life and in therapy, it's like with anxiety, it's like you have to try to slow down. Like, number one is calm your body down, and then your brain will start to shift to the prefrontal cortex instead of the anxiety part of your
Yeah,
brain. And just
exactly.
reminding yourself that you are capable of making non anxious decisions, and then trusting that. That has been, I've been trying to learn how to just trust myself and get myself to a state that I'm like grounded, you know? And yeah, it's for sure a work in progress, but once you get to that mental clarity state, you can make better choices and progress. And I think that's part of the steps of progression.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot more on
No, you're good.
what can I actually do for discipline, like,
Yeah.
j- actually freaking do it,
Just
like,
do it. Yeah,
just
no.
do it, like, grip it and rip it. Just
Mhm.
get some people that'll actually motivate you and help you and
Yeah.
have your priorities
Support
in order of, real
priorities,
goals you want to
support
do.
system. Yeah. There's a funny video. It's like a lady goes into a therapist's office and is talking about like some of her problems, and he just stares at her and he goes, "Stop it."
Yeah,
And
just stop it.
it's a big joke, but just stop it, you know, like she was just like taken aback, and it's a joke video, but it has some truth. Like sometimes our brains like take that shock or that straightforwardness sometimes, and it like shock therapy. I don't know. There's some things about that too. I've heard in the therapy world. But you mentioned in your, I'm going to shift tracks if you're okay with this. Do you have any other
Yeah.
thoughts? Okay. You also mentioned like preparing for a spouse and working like progression in those
Oh.
areas. And I would love to hear your thoughts on both of those.
Which one do you want to do first?
You're passionate about preparing for a spouse. I
Oh,
think a lot
well,
of people are, but
yeah, for
why
sure.
and how do you progress in that?
Well, in many of the aspects that we just talked about, when you said that you'd heard of this dating coach therapist, I was like, I would love to look more into that because maybe
Mm,
there's many other things I'm not doing right. There's
there's so
always room
much.
for improvement in so many things, and
Yeah, no, there
for
really
me,
is.
a big one was this pornography recovery. I was like, you know what, I really want to have that under control and know what to do before I get married. And I always thought that it was just going to be something I was going to have to hide.
Mm,
And thankfully, at this point, it doesn't have to be. And moving forward, it's just like, okay, like how can I really develop more Christ-like attributes?
mm-hmm.
Patience is a big one. One that we just mentioned was slow to anger, and that I'm trying to work on with pickleball. It's like that can leak into other aspects of your life, whether it's
No, totally.
being frustrated in a relationship, being married and having kids. I mean, those are huge ones. And, a big one for, I would say, for a lot of guys is, okay, how can I financially provide for a future family, you know? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily, we mentioned this on our run, not just
Yeah.
providing fiscally for your family, but providing in other aspects for your family in the future. And, if that's my end goal, then what I do now, I can, alter what I do now specifically differently than, you know, if I don't have that type of goal
Hmm.
for the future. And
Yeah.
that's something that, like, I haven't, it's always just kind of been there. And it's just like, yeah, whatever. When it happens, it happens. But it's like, no, like, there's some serious things I can do now to prepare for stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And for sure, with the three main tiers we just talked about and adding more to that
Yeah.
over time, I think is a huge one. And, if you can develop a habit of always changing and progressing, I think that's probably one of the best things you can do for
Mm-hmm.
preparing for a relationship or a spouse, is always being able to change and progress in one way or another. And if you're doing it on your own already, then it's going to be, not as hard when
Do it with
decide to
someone
date. Or
else.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like we've all heard the phrase, "Oh, they're just stuck in their old ways, and they're never going to change." And it's like there's some truth to that. And I think we all have habits
Well,
like that. We're like, "Oh, I'm good the way I am, and I don't need to change for someone else." And
just
it's
part of
like,
our personalities. Some things are just innate, right? But it
yeah,
doesn't
oh,
take
for
away
sure,
from improving for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like, you know what? If I can always be molding and changing now, then that makes it way easier when I find someone, to date or to
Mm-hmm.
marry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Um, so yeah, we had 5 hours of walking on my run that CJ and me and Luke were all chatting. And one thing we were talking about in this area was a book that my cousin recommended me called Calling in the One: 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life.
oh yeah, yeah, I'd love to
And
read that one. That one sounds good
no,
too.
it actually is so good. And because we had like talked about it, I hadn't touched it for a long time. But instead of grabbing my phone like before bed, I went and grabbed that book and I started reading some pages. There's like 7 weeks and I'm only on week 2, but I just started reading the first few paragraphs and I was like, whoa, this is like super applicable to my life, as well as it's a book that makes you just think about how to progress, how to be a better person. And you reflect, and there's homework assignments that help you understand maybe where what you're wanting or what you can contribute to a relationship, what you
Okay,
need from a relationship. There's just more, but it does it in a roundabout way. Like you don't feel like it's a dating coach book. You just feel like it's learning how to improve yourself. And it quotes Jesus and tells lots of interesting stories and experiences. So that's a fun book if anyone's searching for a book out there in regards to preparing for a spouse. But it all just goes back to, yeah, like we're always trying to improve. I also love the phrase change happens in reflection. I wrote like a school paper about it and my work talks a lot about it in our meeting.
yeah,
In our meeting today, that was like our focus was just that concept of, okay, when we're talking about things and evaluating things, that helps us change and
right,
be better. So I love reflecting. I think I've lost some of my journal habits and I'm trying to bring them back because I know just how much it affects me to write things out and then see it and then know like, okay, this is kind of what I'm feeling and then move on from there. So that helps me. Do you have any other last
yeah.
thoughts on this?
Oh, for sure. I'd say at least one more is, like, if you have some real, honest, good friends who can call you out on your bullshit or tell you when you're doing something you shouldn't, or they're like, "Why did you do that?" Or, because
Yeah.
oftentimes we do things and we don't even realize it or recognize it.
Mhm.
And, if you have a real friend that's like, "No, you're full of it. Like, this is garbage. Like, you shouldn't do that." Like a real good friend that's honest with you. I think
Mm.
that's a big one. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And,
Or family. My
I think,
family, I feel like
oh,
points out
family.
things.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's like, hey,
family.
but at the same time you're like, okay, they're doing this because they love me and it really will
Right,
make me
exactly.
better.
Yeah, and oftentimes I'd say 9 times out of 10 when we have a real honest friend that does that for us, like, we don't like it at all, you know?
No, that's where
And
our
it's like,
pride
dang,
comes out, huh?
exactly. Like, that's where we really need to
But yeah.
probably start working on it.
Yeah, no, I've started to pause a little bit more when I get criticism from family or I mean it's they I know they're being helpful. So I just try to pause, try to understand where they're coming from and then like just swallow a humble pill, right? And just, it's amazing how like conversations can change night and day in just a few seconds of flipping my mentality in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, Another thing you mentioned is working, progressing and working. Do you have any last thoughts about that?
Um,
And did you mean like
just
career or just hard work in general?
just in general, I mean, I think that's a habit that we can all form in whatever we're doing is just to work hard and put in, real effort in, even your job and your mental life and your spiritual life and your physical life. I feel like, the easy thing to do is be lazy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a habit that you can form, and you can form the habit of working hard, getting up early, going to bed on time, getting 8 hours, like putting in a hard day's work in whatever it is,
My mind
and it's
goes
a
to
habit.
my mind goes to like a farm. Like you have to get up, you have to go take care of
Yeah,
in your
there's
words, shit.
responsibilities. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
and
shit that
that
needs to be done.
and just knowing that that needs to get done just propels you even when you don't. I think it's doing things even though you don't want to do them. I think this
Exactly.
is huge, but that it. Sorry, I'm stumbling. I just my mind keeps going back to all the parts. So it's like you need your motivation, you need your why, and then a plan of the how. But sometimes that all just goes away. Like sometimes we just forget about it all. So what do you say when you face when you're trying but nothing's working and when you're failing? Like you said progressive failure, but like what do you do? I guess rock bottom or you just feel like nothing's working. What advice do you have with that?
Man, go, first and foremost, turn to the Lord, right? And He'll pick you up and tell you you're okay and that you're loved and that you can move on.
Mm.
I mean, having elderly people who you look up to, I think is a huge one that you can go actually talk to, or if there's a specific, you know, thing you're looking to do, whether it's okay, I want to go talk to two or three businessmen that I look up to and look for, insight because I failed in this one aspect, and try and go from there. Or if it's,
Mhm.
spiritually, okay, like, whether it's your bishop or two or three. I mean, I think we all have people we look up to as father or mother figures aside from our own fathers and our own mothers,
Yeah.
that we all look up to, that we can go talk to for advice, and try and pick ourselves back up and put together an actual real list of things to do or plan or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
one of the best places to learn is in failure. And I think all businessmen will tell you that the best place to learn is after you've failed.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool, I failed. And I think your next question you should learn to try and ask is, how can I use that to my advantage?
Like the now what? Yeah.
Yeah. Instead,
That's
and obviously
huge.
we all have our feelings, and we definitely need a pity party, I guess, for a minute. But it's like, cool, how can I use this experience to my advantage now?
Yeah. And I think there's countless stories of that. I think of
For sure.
the book Insights by President the autobiography about President Nelson.
Yeah.
There's a part where he had tried to help this family with all their kids with this heart defect and all the children ended up passing away and he just like went home and just cried and cried and cried like just so sad that he couldn't figure it out and his wife's like, "Are you done crying yet? Now get up and go keep researching so this doesn't happen
Yeah.
again." You know,
Uh-huh.
and it's harsh, but it's like yeah, definitely feel your feelings, but then just let that motivate you to be better. You know, like my race
Yeah.
didn't go according to how I would have liked it. It was just way too long. So now next time I was like, okay, now I'm gonna let that pain feed me and I'm gonna run harder through it and then like the prep before, like I'm going to set my timer 4 times a day and stretch. Because that if I don't do that, I know I'll get hurt, you know, and I had to get hurt to realize that. And that could in some people's way be a failure. Or I don't know why I feel emotional. I don't know why I'm getting emotional about this. My cousin was in a race. He's an incredible cyclist. And he just posted an Instagram post. He was in like the top 3 and he was coming in the last home stretch of the race and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to finish with these amazing cyclists. Like I'm going to rank." And then something I should read it. Something hit his front tire, a pebble or a rock and it bent and he was flown 26 miles an hour into a wall. And
Wow.
thank goodness he's not paralyzed, but his jawbone or his chin bone showed, his nose was off, his lips were off, and they life flighted him, and he was sedated, and they fixed it, and he has some fractured neck injuries, but just like that pivotal moment, right? Like he's on his way to place in this amazing race, and then he gets hurt, and like I'm sure there's so many lessons he'll learn from this, and he's already learning so much. And I mean, he still wants to get back on his bike when he's ready, and it's not keeping him back from his goals, but it's those experiences, those struggles that inevitably come into our lives that then we can choose how we reflect on them and let them empower us or not. They could break us or they can build us, and that's the cliche term, but it's true. It's a matter of, let's think about this for a second and find the people who can think about it with us. I definitely turn to a lot of people for support, and I've been trying not to do that as much just because I want to try to figure out myself more. But my little brother was like, well, why not talk about it with someone? Like it could only help you, So yeah. There's my rambling for this episode. There's a lot on my mind,
No,
but
that's amazing, and that'd be, I can't even imagine. I can't even put my shoes in your cousin's place, right?
yeah, my cousin. Yeah.
It's just like, dang, like I can't, that's no place for me to judge on what, I can give insight or support, but dang, that's something, we all go through very specific individual things,
Mhm.
and all we can do is lend a hand.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of the many phrases that we say is like, hey, look, I don't know what you're going through, but
Mhm.
there is someone that does, and
Yeah.
it's Jesus Christ. And if I can support or help in any way, like, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. I love that. Lend a hand. I mean, we've talked about so much in this episode, but I feel like my uplifting takeaway is the progressive failure and lend a hand. I think that is just something I want to focus on. And you said get up and keep going. Do you have anything else from our conversation today that you wanna leave people with?
Just thank you for letting me do this. Honestly, this has been something on my bucket list of things to do is not necessarily like just get on a podcast, but like to share kind of my story with pornography recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been something I've wanted to do for a while now that I've
Mhm.
been open for so long, and I appreciate you for letting me do that. And then, thanks for letting some rando join you with, you know, your coworker's random brother joined you as your pacer. Like, I thought that was super cool. Like, that's definitely something on my bucket list I wanted to do. And
5 hours
so
later,
it's,
you're like, what did I do?
yeah, I was like, I don't care. It was awesome. Like, how
No.
many times can you say you went and helped some random person pace their last 14 miles of
Yeah.
their, ultra marathon in the dark and by ourselves? I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, Luke and you were so helpful, and the support I got in that race was just indescribable how much it helped me. So thank you. That was fun and hard and brutal, but we had a lot of good conversations, which spurred to be like, hey, you should be on my podcast. Like you have a lot of insights that I think people would benefit from. So I'm grateful you were here, and I hope it's okay. I could leave your Instagram in the show notes if people want to reach out to you, maybe those who have
Oh,
struggled with similar
sure.
things. I mean, like you said, when you find someone who's maybe been through something similar, I just know how much that helps you get to where you want to be, and seeing how other people have overcome challenges motivates you to overcome them. So we'll leave that in the show notes for people who want to maybe
Absolutely.
connect later. But yeah, I love that you said the quote you wanted to share is work hard, play harder. And that really resonates with me because I'm a yellow and motivated by fun and play. And I think it's fun that you can have work and play together. And I think in this process of progressive failure and just struggles and mountains to climb in our lives, like it can be fun along the way. And I think remembering that, like in the day to day, even in the midst of the hardest thing, there's something that could be fun or uplifting. So I hope people can find that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else, CJ?
I think that's it. Unless you want to talk about more, or do it
I,
for another
I,
episode.
well, yeah, we'll save it for another episode. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.